uh, testing Hey everybody, welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission on this Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. This meeting is called to order. Right now, I'll request staff to call the roll for commissioners who are present and not.
Commissioner Davidson. Did we lose Commissioner Davidson? Looks like we did.
Like we did.
Commissioner Lubomirsky.
Here.
Davidson came back.
Commissioner Saudi.
Present.
Vice Chair Privatali.
Here.
And Commissioner Davidson.
Here.
Great.
Right.
And did I say Chair Samudzi?
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm here. All right, next we'll move on to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the meeting procedures. Due to the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order, we've had to establish new ways of conducting our public meetings. I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening.
Sure, thank you, Chair Samudzi. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask staff and everybody that's not a commissioner to go ahead and turn off your cameras. Thank you. Before we begin, we would like to announce that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will include Spanish language simultaneous interpretation provided by qualified interpreters on the Spanish channel. For that reason, I will try to speak slowly so that it's easy to translate. You can join the Spanish channel by clicking on the interpretation icon in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom. It looks like a globe. And we have posted a link to the Zoom meeting in the live chat. As a reminder, we ask that everyone participating tonight speak slowly to allow our interpreter to effectively express your comments.
Antes de comenzar, queremos anunciar que la reunión de la Comisión de Planificación de esta noche incluirá la interpretación simultánea en español proporcionada por intérpretes cualificados en el canal de Zoom en español. Puede unirse al canal de español haciendo clic en el icono de la interpretación en la barra de herramientas Zoom. Parece un globo terráqueo. Y hemos publicado el enlace de la reunión Zoom en el chat en vivo. Como recordatorio, pedimos que todos los participantes esta noche hablen lentamente para permitir que nuestro intérprete exprese eficazmente sus comentarios.
This meeting is being streamed live to YouTube, where viewers can provide comment in live chat by going to www.youtube.com/City of San Rafael or by phone at 669-900-9128 and entering the meeting ID, which is 897-5534-1830#. In addition, we are now offering closed caption streaming of this meeting. The link to the closed caption service can be found in the YouTube live chat box. Those who would like to provide a comment on YouTube will need to have a Google account, which can be created at accounts.google.com. If you are participating by telephone tonight and wish to provide comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. Once it's your turn to speak, you will hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. You will need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you unmute yourself, you will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure to have the volume of any other device watching YouTube Live turned down so that you don't get feedback or audio delay. If you are submitting public comments on YouTube, please write public comment in all caps. Introduce yourself and submit your comment in groups, as there is a 200-character limit. Keep in mind that comments in the chat are limited to 3 minutes worth of text. Comments will be read as submitted. However, words including profanity, obscenities, or discriminatory language that disturb the decorum of the meeting will not be read into the record. If you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Planning Commission and published to our website.
Thank you. Let me now describe the meeting procedures for tonight. We will begin with the staff report. Then we will hear from the applicant. Applicant, please try to keep your presentation to no more than 10 minutes. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. We will read any comments that are made into YouTube live chat, and people on the conference call can speak when they receive the notification that they have been unmuted. For those that are speaking, please keep comments to 3 minutes or less. Commission will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, applicant, or public after each segment. We will close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and action if necessary. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the commission at this time.
If there's anyone on the conference call or through Zoom that wishes to provide public comment on a topic not on the agenda, you may press *9 on your phone or click Participants tab and select Raised Hand through Zoom to virtually raise your hand. Once it is your turn to hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you may press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you will be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure you have the volume of any other device watching YouTube Live turned down so you don't get feedback or audio delay. While I wait for participants to press *9, I will request comments submitted via YouTube Live chat for any item not on the agenda. And I do not see any. And I do not see raised hands.
Okay, thanks, Ellie. We'll now move on to the consent calendar, which has one item, minutes from February 9th, 2021's Planning Commission meeting. We'll be just approving the minutes from that meeting. And the recommendation is to approve as submitted. Are there any comments from the public on the consent calendar?
Is there anyone in the conference call that wishes to provide comment on the minutes? If so, please press * to virtually raise your hand. Once it's your turn, you'll hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you'll press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you will be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure to have the volume of any other device you're watching on YouTube Live turned down so you don't get feedback or audio delay. While I wait for participants to press *9, I will also request public comments on chat, and seeing none, I will now check to see for raised hands, and I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, thanks again, Allie. So at this point, if there are no comments or edits from other commissioners present, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve minutes.
Okay, I heard a movement from Commissioner Lubomirsky. Is there a second?
Second, Davidson.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will move to a roll call. I'll ask staff to conduct a roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lubomirsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Saudi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Privatali,
Yes.
and Chair Samudzi.
Yes. Now we'll move to tonight's first item for public hearing. This is an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. The recommended action is to continue to a date certain of March 23rd, 2021. At this time, I'll request a staff report.
Thank you, Chair Samudzi. I will not have a whole lot to say. I'm just requesting a continuation as staff to allow staff to work with other departments in trying to create a better packet for you to discuss and deliberate on. And so that is the purpose of the continuation.
Okay, any further comments at this point, or from staff, I mean? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'll open the public hearing and I'll ask staff to open up public comments. So first step is we'll have commissioners ask any questions of clarification or comments. And if not, I'll request a motion to continue the hearing to March 23rd.
So moved.
I heard a motion again from Commissioner Lubomirsky. Do I hear a second?
Second, Davidson.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move to a roll call.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lubomirsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Saudi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Privatali, Chair Samutzi.
Yes. We'll now move on to tonight's second item for public hearing. This item is the Tiscornia Marsh Restoration Project. This is north of Canal Street, scoping. We're having a scoping hearing, rather, for the notice of preparation for an environmental impact report to assess the impacts of the Tiscornia Marsh Restoration Project. The project proposes to restore the tidal marsh and mudflats located north and outboard of Canal Street, as well as the diked marsh located north of Albert J. Borough Center, Pickleweed Park playfields. And we'll have the applicant, Marin Audubon Society, presenting. So at this point, I'll request a staff report.
Great. Good evening, Chair Samutzi, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public. My name is Paul Jensen. I'm the Community Development Director. However, I'm wearing a different hat tonight. I'm actually the project planner on the Tiscornia Marsh Restoration Project. And I'm going to share my screen because I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. And can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, terrific. So some of you may wonder and what is a Tiscornia Marsh? Well, a Tiscornia Marsh is a tidal marsh and baylands that's located outboard and north of Canal Street and east of the Albert J. Borough Center and Pickleweed Park. It encompasses about 20 acres. And some of the noted landmarks around this marsh is one, it's right at the mouth of the San Rafael Channel or the San Rafael Creek, which is right in this area. It's bordered by the canal neighborhood as well as Spinnaker Point. The Marin Audubon Society owns this property. Marin Audubon has owned it for probably well over 30 years, and they're the project proponent on this restoration effort. And the project not only includes their 20-acre parcel, but the city-owned dike marshland that's located north of Pickleweed Park. And I'm going to quickly go back to the aerial and point to that dark diked marshland, which is the area in circle here. The purpose of the project is really to restore the wetlands, which have been degraded over the many years of a lot of tidal action that's occurred and impacted that area. The benefits of the restoration project are not only habitat, improving habitat, but also combating sea level rise and also addressing flooding in the area. Marin Audubon Society was successful in securing a Measure AA grant. This is the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority grant. And some of you may be familiar with this. If you get a tax bill, you get a $12 charge on your tax bill that goes toward this Measure AA, which is really for restoration projects like this along the bay and primarily earmarked for sea level rise adaptation. The City Council endorsed the Measure AA application in 2019, and actually the grant supports and funds the planning process for this project. The project's subject to approvals and permit clearances from a number of agencies like BCDC, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the City of San Rafael. In fact, the city is the lead agency. We're the first agency to touch this project through the regulatory permitting process. And we are the first agency to basically initiate environmental review, which is the perfect purpose of the meeting this evening. Applications have been filed with the city. They were filed at the beginning of the year. The project is subject to use permit and environmental and design review permits, which require action by the Planning Commission. And these applications, because of the nature of the project, are indeed subject to environmental review under CEQA. So it was decided early on that this project would undergo environmental impact report preparation and review. And the first step in this process is a notice of preparation. And under the CEQA guidelines, we are required to release a notice of preparation when we as a lead agency have decided to prepare an environmental impact report. And what that does is it triggers a 30-day period for agencies and the public to review and comment on the topic areas to be studied in the EIR. We published the notice of preparation in late January, and per our own environmental review procedures, the Planning Commission is required to conduct a scoping meeting during this review period to not only accept comments, but also to provide comments on the scope of the EIR. We accept it until this Friday, February 26th, which is the closure of the 30-day public review period. However, state agencies will be allowed to review and comment on this notice and submit comments to us by March 19th, 2021. So I want to just quickly cover the topic areas that are identified in the staff report that staff believes and recommends should be addressed in the environmental impact report. I do want to note that usually during this process, we will prepare what's called an initial study checklist, which will identify what topic areas will be addressed. But the way the CEQA guidelines work is if you decide early in the process to prepare an EIR, you can bypass that initial study and identify those scope of issues as part of the notice of preparation process, which is what we're doing. And most of these topic areas address aesthetics. Of course, part of the project includes raising of the levee along the shoreline. So there's view questions of view impacts of scenic resources. We have air quality and hydrology and water quality and a number of other topic areas that are triggered by construction related impacts. So they may not be the end result of the project and the operations of the project, but are construction impacts like traffic and transportation. Obviously, the restoration project will not result in traffic impacts, but the construction-related impacts associated with building this project will. Of course, biological resources, cultural and tribal resources, we are required by Assembly Bill to offer tribal consultation with the local tribe, and we've already reached out and have initiated that process. And then there are a number of other topic areas that we believe should be covered in the document. The one thing I want to mention is EIRs are required to assess project alternatives, and these are all reasonable alternatives to the project that meet the objectives of the project. And as outlined in the staff report, we're suggesting that 3 alternatives be analyzed. So in terms of the next steps, the scoping of the study of the topics will be finalized after the closure of the notice of preparation review period. And from that point, we will proceed with drafting an environmental impact report, which should take about 3 months. Once that report's completed, it will be published. There will be a 45-day public review period, and then a public hearing like the one you're conducting tonight on specifically on the adequacy of the EIR. Once that's completed, we will proceed with preparing a final environmental impact report, which when completed, it will be released, and that will be packaged with the use permit and design review permit application and returned to the Planning Commission for final action. And I believe, okay, I think that's it. Okay. So the one thing I do want to mention in terms of crafting public comments for tonight, I think it's important to make sure to focus solely on what you would like to see studied in the EIR. And that's not only the public, but the Planning Commission. There will be future hearings on this project to provide comment on the merits or the adequacy of the project itself. So with that, I will close. And okay.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Sure.
So at this point, To the commission, I'll ask for any questions of clarification, and I'm going to ask you to limit discussion for the discussion piece after the public hearing. So right now, just questions of clarification. Okay, no questions from commission. At that point, then I'll open the public hearing and I'll ask staff to open up public comments.
Actually, if I may interject, we're going to have a presentation by the project design team and the applicant, Marin Audubon Society. They'll go first. They have a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, so what we'll do is, so we have not opened the public hearing yet. Let's run through this presentation first, and then I'll open it back up to the commission for further questions of clarification.
I had a few words first. Is that okay? Should I go? Yeah, I'm Barbara Salzman, and I'm the president of Marin Audubon Society. And I have to say that we're really pleased to be here tonight. We actually have been concerned about this project at this site, as Paul said, for about 30 years, but we've actually only owned it since 2008. It was donated to us by Mary Tiscornia, and we've kept that name in her honor. And we have a program where we try and purchase habitat areas. And so this was part of that program. We actually own about 500 acres of baylands. The first application that we made was to the Marine Community Foundation. They had a program of adaptation. They accepted applications for adaptation for sea level rise, and we got a grant from them, and that enabled us to do a conceptual plan that then enabled us to go and get the Measure AA funds. In addition to all of the things that Paul, the good things that said that this project is going to do, we're also going to improve public access and, of course, raise the levee and improve the flood benefits and control for the community. We partnered with the Multicultural Center of Marin, and they've done a lot of public outreach and community involvement for us. And we're pleased to have ESA as our engineers, and they're going to make the presentation. So thanks very much. Dane, I guess it's gonna.
Can you all see this?
Yep.
Let me get the display settings fixed and then I'll start. Okay. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Barbara. I think that's a pretty good introduction. I think I'll try to focus mostly on the elements of the project itself, but yeah, I wanted to reiterate that again, this is a Measure AA funded project. Mostly we'll be covering in the next 5 or 6 slides here some details about what the project consists of, so that people can ask questions. And I want to say too that I have a couple of colleagues here with me. So Ann Borgonovo is a senior engineer with ESA, and she's the director on our end for this, leading the design. And also have Elisa Moore here, who is serving as the CEQA lead coordinator with ESA. So they'll both be involved moving forward as well. So,
Dane, can I just really quickly interrupt and just remind you that we have the interpreters, and if you don't mind, I'm just speaking slowly so that they can keep up. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sure, I will try my best. So I think Paul gave a little bit of an overview of the project site and what Tiscornia Marsh is, what the project consists of. So I won't spend too much time on this, but I do want to give a little bit of context. So again, Tiscornia Marsh, what we call Tiscornia Marsh, is this little sliver of marsh that is on the east side of Pickleweed Park. And so we completed a conceptual design in 2018 that was looking at how can we address habitat loss at the site and sea level rise? And also, can we also include things like improving public access, like Barbara mentioned, and can we improve flood protection for the canal neighborhood, which is right here? And so this project initially started out within this Tiscornia, this Marin Audubon Society property, but the city has been, actively partnering on this project, and this now actually includes improving the levee around the soccer field and also restoring this closed off marsh here. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. So this is sort of just a colorful picture of existing conditions. And the reason why I'm showing it is because I'm going to show a similar picture of the design in a similar color scheme. So I just want to introduce you. This green area is the existing marsh. This brown dashed line here is the existing trail that goes around Pickleweed Park. And this is that diked marsh area that's owned by the city and is immediately north of the soccer field. So to give you some visual context of all of this, if you were to stand on that trail and look towards the bay, and you can kind of see this is that PG&E tower right here to the left. This is the existing marsh and the existing marsh edge. And one thing that we found is that this marsh is threatened. It's been eroding very rapidly for at least the last 5 decades. And so when we think about why is this project needed, what is the reason for all of this? If we look at sea level rise and what we expect to happen, if there was nothing done, essentially the marsh would continue to erode. We've been seeing it eroding at about 3 to 5 feet per year. So we would lose the habitat that the existing marsh provides for several endangered species. But also that would open up this walking trail and this levee exposed to more erosion, and overtopping in the future. And so doing nothing would essentially increase the vulnerability of the community. So what the design essentially includes is several elements. What it includes, first of all, is if you look at this brown line here, this brown dashed line, the first element would be to raise the levee. This is sort of a rare opportunity to have not just an existing habitat to preserve, but such a good opportunity to improve the flood protection of the community, of the canal neighborhood. And so this is something where the city has been, a very good partner in this project, helping us to think about this. And so first and foremost, we would want to raise the levee around the site. And so that would include placing a new setback levee along the northern edge of the soccer field, also raising the levee on the eastern side and raising the levee on the southern side near what used to be Schoen Park. What the design will also include is, once this levee is raised, lowering this outer trail portion. So essentially the trail would be along this route now. And so essentially we would be opening up this diked marsh to tidal action again. So we would be opening that back up so it becomes viable habitat. And then another element that the project includes is actually restoring a portion of the marsh on the eastern side. And so essentially we looked at a lot of images, aerial images from planes of how big the marsh used to be. That's how we learned how fast it's been eroding. And we worked with the geotechnical engineer, Holtgren Tillis engineers, and we looked at the feasibility of different footprints of marsh restoration. And so where this is now is a footprint that roughly corresponds to what the marsh was in the 1950s at its maximum extent that we've seen. And so the goal here is to preserve and actually enhance habitat for several endangered species, but also, we want to keep the marsh's function for the future of protecting the levee behind it from erosion. And so it really plays an important role for that. And it's also, important just to preserve this for the sake of keeping it in the community for generations. So apart from building this new marsh, we would also want to prevent it from eroding in the future. And so another element this includes is a gravel beach fronting the marsh. And so this is something that's sort of a new technique that's been tried out in the last 10 or 15 years in San Francisco Bay. So we'll be applying some lessons learned. It would also include a course jetty on the northern side to protect the beach from boat wakes. And so, again, just repeating through this, the main elements of this project would be to raise the levee, so essentially improving the flood protection of the community, but also opening up this dike marsh to tidal restoration, restoring this outer portion of the marsh here on the east side, and then placing a coarse beach in front of that. And so another thing I wanted to mention is that the way that we're looking to do this is to beneficially reuse dredge material, either from the canal or from other locations nearby. That's the goal, is to reuse dredge material that would otherwise be dumped elsewhere in the bay to rebuild the marsh. So to give some more context here, if you look at this black line, I'm going to show a cross section of what the concept of the design looks like along that cross section. So if you look at this red arrow going from left to right, the existing conditions, you have this diked marsh north of the soccer field with the trail going around it. You have a sliver of marsh that is left in front of it that's been eroding at 3 to 5 feet per year. And you have a mud flat, including a footprint of what used to be marsh out here. And so essentially what we're looking at is opening up this dike marsh to tidal action, adding new marsh on the eastern side, and then fronting that with a gravel beach. And then lastly, just wanted to give some more spatial context for the levee improvements. This is a really important project component. We've been working with the city pretty closely on this. Essentially, this levee north of the soccer field, this new levee, would essentially be the new route for the trail on the eastern side. And this would involve raising the levee, several feet above what the current edge of that field is now. On the eastern side, we would raise it slightly. It's actually the eastern side of the soccer field is relatively high, but we would raise that a little bit. And on the southern side, we would be raising the levee and moving it back a few feet. And the reason we wanted to do that is because that would allow us to have a more gradual slope going towards the marsh, which is better for several reasons. One of them being it's better for habitat to have that upland transition space. So that covers everything. So I think I will hand it back to Paul.
Chair Samudzi, if I may request some time, about 20 to 30 seconds, to allow our interpreters to swap.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're good, Allie.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can go ahead at this point?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. No worries. Okay, so now I'll turn this over to the commission and I'll ask for questions of staff and or the consulting team. And we'll just limit at this point questions to just questions of clarification. Commissioner Saudi.
Hi. Well, first I want to say that I'm really in support of this project. I think there's so many different aspects that it helps address sea level rise, protecting a vulnerable community and that vibrancy of that neighborhood, as well as really restoring the marsh and making sure that our bay is ecologically sound. So super excited about this project. I do have a couple questions. In terms of the elevation of that sidewalk that you were showing, I don't know if we can look at that slide again. But how does, I know we're changing a lot of elevations, but do we start to impact the existing sidewalks and how they meet the street and the curbs once we get into back to the street? And then my other question was about, the extension of that marsh and restoring it to where we were in the 50s. How does that affect any boat access, or have you guys started to look at that, or is that just part of future EIR work and the next phase? Those are the only two questions I had.
I'm going to answer the second question, Commissioner Saudi, and that is the question about the bigger picture and actually restoring everything out there to what it was in the 50s means actually returning everything to tidal action that's been filled and developed. So the grander plan is to look at that whole reach out there and see what can be done along the levee and outboard of the levee. This is just one piece of it. And no, it would not interrupt any sort of navigation into and out of the creek. And we're going to be looking at greater adaptation planning for the area as a whole. So, and then Dane, I'm going to defer to you regarding the slope transitions.
Oh, I think I may defer to Ann, actually.
Well, yeah, just to answer that, the levee improvements are separate from the sidewalk. So we aren't really tying into the sidewalk. So it shouldn't change the sidewalk elevations.
Okay.
It'll change the path elevations.
Got it. I think I saw the sidewalk on there and it flashed before I got to see it all the way. And then I actually have one more question about educational opportunities. I mean, once the marsh is restored and we have that trail, is there an opportunity to have educational markers like there are in like Blackie's pasture? I know when we go on hikes and we go to more southern Marin locations, there's a lot of signage that helps the community really understand the restoration, and then also like gives them more appreciation of what's existing in the marsh. And I mean, I know personally, we spent a lot of time with those kind of interactive, or not interactive, but educational opportunities. And it'd be good to have that and really allow the community to understand the work you guys have done.
I can say that's a terrific suggestion, and we've done that elsewhere along the shoreline, actually at Loch Lomond Marina, and also further down along this same shoreline path. As you turn the corner at Spinnaker Point, there is informational signage on an eelgrass restoration project that's further out into the bay, and so that's pretty common. And I would expect Marin Audubon would probably consider doing that. So
yeah, that we would
Wonderful.
certainly do that. We did it in Corte Madera, our most recent restoration. We've done it up at Bahia, another one. So it would certainly be something we would do.
Great.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner. Oh, actually, had your
First, sure, I can. Can people hear me okay? Okay, great. So I had 3 questions, and I also want to let you know I think this is a great idea. I'm in favor of the project. I walked half of the trail over the weekend with my son, and it is beautiful out there. And also it's a tremendous, as people probably know, the community center in Prairie Park. Sorry for my background. Is it's a busy, vibrant place. So it's great. I love the idea that we're connecting the community to this restoration project even more. 3 questions. The first one is, why is the dike and the city-owned marsh there in the first place? That's the first question. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that. If not, that's okay. Just curious.
I think I can jump in. It was originally it was supposed to be a continuation of the fields. This is way back when they were going to fill it and make fields all the way out to that point, as I understand it.
Makes sense. My second question is, I noticed there is some trash out there in the wetlands, particularly near the PG&E transmission towers. There's a small walkway that goes out, and I'm just wondering, is there a plan to maintain the wetland to pick up trash or prevent trash?
Well, we could take a look at that. I don't know how serious an issue it is out there. But at the moment, it's not really part of the project. It's something that a management issue that we would take a look at the need for it later on when we get it's going to be some years before we get the project done. So
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, no, it's not severe, but I would say that, considering obviously you want the wetland to be as pristine as.
yeah, I don't know if it has any relationship to the PG&E tower. They're talking about moving those. So that's another project that's sort of related, but not really to ours. So that we're going to have to consider that also.
If I may add to your question, Commissioner Privitali, is if you go further down along the shoreline park, and maybe you experienced this when you you can walk all the way down almost to the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, and most of that is public. And if you look down the slope, there is like a short fence, like an open, like vinyl clad or a cyclone fence. And that's there on purpose, one, to keep dogs from going into the bay and people and children, but also to trap trash so that it doesn't end up in the bay. So sometimes you see trash collected in those areas, but that's intentional that, that fence is there so that doesn't end up in the bay. And I would expect probably that's something that we may end up requiring along the edge here of the slope bank. So.
Great, thank you. Excellent, thank you. And then my last question was about the gravel beach. I was wondering, is the gravel beach going to be made of a material that is native to the bay?
That's a good question. Yes, it will. It's going to probably be rounded gravel, cobble. A potential source is there's a waste product that comes from doing sand mining in the bay, and they sort out the larger pieces. So that's the intent, is that it would be though it's not, it's not native material right to that area, but native in the bay.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to hop in, and this is a great project. I think it'll improve the just connection with the bay and nature for the canal neighborhood. I wanted to thank Barbara. Thank you guys for all the work you guys do in the bay in general, in Marin County, and now it's great to be working with you in San Rafael. So thank you guys very much for your efforts too. Paul, this is probably for 50 years from now, but you'll still be around. It's just an educational thing. So if we build up the dikes all the way around to the point where those first set of houses are, this is long range, right? 50 years when the sea level rises, what happens to the connection where we go private houses to where this dike is, for instance, ends? I'm just curious.
We actually don't know yet. In fact, that's a real good point. You could put up a levee and there's some termination point to the levee and the water creeps around that. So it's going to have to be looked at a greater level, and it's going to be a combination of things, probably raising the levee, probably a similar approach outboard of the levee along the greater shoreline. That's what's proposed here, what's called like a horizontal levee or ecotone type levee, which cuts down on the wave action. There's been other thoughts of, for example, a tidal gate at the mouth of the San Rafael Creek. And I think it's going to be a combination of a number of things in order to clearly combat sea level rise. So, and you know, that's going to be a big effort, that whole planning for that. So we're planting the seed on that right now through the general plan policies. But if you may recall from the general plan 2040, we have a number of sea level rise policies and programs. And the biggest program is creating an adaptation plan for that area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davidson?
I have a question. Barbara, it's good to see you. I echo appreciation from Commissioner Lubrameski and all your work around the Bay Area. My question is about the dredge material that you're planning on bringing in to raise those levees. I know that getting dredge material is very hard and very expensive, and typically, well, anyways, I'm just wondering, where are you getting that material from?
Well, we're not sure yet.
Okay.
We've been talking to, we have three potential sources. One is the core project right next door, which, you know, we're talking to them about that. Their money was delayed a bit, so, and the timing may be off. The second alternatives are a little less further along. One is the Bridge District. I've talked with them, and they're actually kind of interested because they have to dredge every 4 or 5 years. And the other one is Loch Lomond, which is not part of the core dredging project. And they have to dredge in a couple of years also.
What Barbara's referring to, Commissioner Davidson, is the core dredging project along the San Rafael Creek, which used to happen every 7 years. And of course, money ran out and that's not done. And we've run out of upland sites to put spoils materials, but that's a very good local source. Loch Lomond Marina is pretty diligent about dredging their marina, particularly the channel from the marina out to the deep water section, because obviously they need to keep that clear for 500 plus berths at that marina. So they're doing that pretty regularly every 4 or 5 years. So there are some local sources that hopefully the timing works to tap.
Okay. And the other question I have is about the funding of this grant. Is there anticipation that it covers construction? And
No.
About the fully scoped project?
Well, I don't know what you mean in anticipation. Anyway, hi Bernice, good seeing you. This grant does not cover construction. It only covers planning up to permitting. We have to go back again and do another application for permitting and construction. I frankly would not, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I would not consider that a problem. I think that there's enough important components of this project that have regional importance that I really think that we wouldn't have any problem. Plus, there's actually a couple of others. One other source, Irwin, has also been brought up to us. I'm sure you're familiar with Irwin, that we might join with the Multicultural Center to go in on that project that would pay for part of what we're doing.
Okay, and as you know, one of the biggest challenges with these projects is the maintenance cost, because it's one thing to raise the levees, but the other thing is maintaining them. As we know, there's going to be natural subsidence and erosion, so there's going to need to be maintenance. And as all public jurisdictions know, maintenance grant funding is pretty much non-existent. So how are we planning on making sure that this stays a functional project as designed?
We'll have to look at that. Well, I would not anticipate that there would be at least for a long time, I would think the project should be sturdy enough to be maintained without much. Maybe Dane would and Ann would have some different view, but that it wouldn't require a whole lot of maintenance. Eventually, you know, who knows, some 20, 50 years from now, maybe something would need to be done, but that's what we're doing now. And so there probably would be opportunities then too.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add, Ann?
It is a good question. I was going to add that we are building the levee, we're overbuilding the levee crest a bit in anticipation of the subsidence. So that, it's not to promise levees aren't ever going to need maintenance, but we're taking account into the short-term subsidence and into the levee height.
Okay, and is the beach area going to be open to the public?
Well, no, it isn't meant to be that kind of a beach, and there really isn't any. Won't be any. It's going to be open at both ends, so there's no way for people to get there anyway. But
Okay.
no, it's not intended to be. You know, the people around the bay have struggled with this name because that's what it makes people think that they can go, you know, sunbathe. But nobody has come up with a better name that makes it clear that this is really a structure that's part of the restoration, and it's not intended to be a recreation area.
Okay, and the last question I have is, given the continuity of that path all the way down to the you know, past Target, and the need of this exact same solution, do we perhaps have an opportunity to look at that with this project? Since when doing an EIR, it seems to be that that's the solution we're looking for the rest of that path.
I'm not sure what the question was. Are you talking about looking at another parcel?
Yes, so just looking at the pathway, the pedestrian one, the one you're raising, that solution is needed not just for this parcel, it's needed all the way down, all the way to Target and past. So I'm thinking if this works for this parcel and the EIR shows that it's feasible and no significant impact and it has all these benefits, why is this an opportunity to open the scope to the rest of the path?
Well, the only other piece, I don't know if you want me to address this, Paul, or if you want to address it.
Hi, Barbara. I have a few comments, but go ahead.
It is the only other piece that is unimproved is owned by a private person. And frankly, we've tried to buy that property twice. We would love to do something there, but it's owned by a private person, and you know, we just would not have the ability to do it unless the owners. It's owned by three people, I should say, unless they agreed. So.
No, I can say this. We're looking at this project on its merits and its environmental impacts. There's likely to be some good takeaways from this project. I mean, it's the first project to look at this type of restoration work and levee work in the light of sea level rise right now. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to prepare a grander adaptation plan for that whole reach out in East San Rafael. So I think we could probably, in looking at the EIR, we have to look at cumulative impacts. There may be a discussion in there that we can include that, you know, at least opens that door to looking at the greater San Rafael reach by raising that levee. But we all know that that's going to need to happen to make this work for that whole area. So so analyzing it specifically for this project, no, that's beyond the scope, but at least identifying it probably in the cumulative impacts section of the EIR as looking, you know, for the greater project, yes.
Okay, and Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Any other questions of clarification point? Commissioner Saudi, your hand's up.
Yeah, I had one more question, and I think it may have been sort of answered, and I just wanted to get more clarification. So what we're doing is restoring this area back to where we were in the 1950s. We're trying to lessen the impact of sea level rise, but once that sea level rise starts to occur, I feel like there'll be a point where whatever work we do, whether it's in like 50 years or 100 years, may not be sufficient. Is that part of the EIR, or how do we project? I know it's really hard to project into the future, into how lasting this will be, and what we can do to help, to help set guidelines for when we have to revisit this area and things like that.
Yeah, I can comment on that. First of all, our general plan 2040, I mentioned earlier, where we have specific programs, and I know you guys took a look at the general plan. What we're using as our benchmark for sea level rise is 2050 projections, not 2100, but 2050 projections, because once you get past 2050, the level of uncertainty considerably, goes up the scale. And the other thing is that under CEQA, and let's dial this back under CEQA, we have to be careful not to be overly speculative. I mean, the CEQA guidelines basically say we cannot really analyze something that is overly speculative, which is why we're careful at looking at this sort of in the 2050 projection forecast, because that's pretty close to our general plan forecast. And that's where we're comfortably looking at this. But anything beyond that, I believe, and we've got ESA here, they're environmental consultants, they know CEQA far better than I do. We get into the speculation realm, which is a slippery slope.
Totally understandable. I agree. I just think that, these EIRs take a while and these projects takes a while. So we're looking at probably up to 5 years to see it complete, right? So that puts us close to 2030. So we have, I'm just trying to understand the timeline of it, but it's all good work that needs to be done.
I have one more question. Is the levee just south of this parcel all around the residential area before you get to canalways? Is that all under the purview of the city?
Yes, it's part of public parkland.
Okay, and again, I'm going back. Paul, is there maybe an anticipation that the city, hopefully in the near future, will be pursuing a grant, maybe to do similar work? It seems to me that we have a great opportunity to include the scope of work in this EIR versus the future, where the city would need to go through a very similar path to get funds to do the exact same study.
Well, we're not quite there yet. This project is two or three steps ahead of the city's grander effort for that larger reach. And so, while I think there would be some benefits of including, some analysis of something beyond this project in this EIR, the timing isn't there. And to answer your question, yes, one of the reasons why we have the city council endorse what's called a priority development area designation for the southeast San Rafael and the canal area is to seek and be able to be eligible for funding to look at and study and identify measures for adaptation. And so we're setting that up right now. We're just not ready yet we don't have the funds available yet to start studying that, but we're we've set up that area so that we're eligible for grants that we can seek.
Okay, I guess I was overly hopeful to hear from her that she would just add that to that scope of work.
Sure. Well, we applied for a similar Measure AA grant twice at the Spinnaker Marsh, which is when you go around the bend of that of Spinnaker Point and you go down toward the Canalways property. There's a diked marsh there that we were seeking funds for, but were turned down twice because it was very controversial with the neighborhood. And so, we've looked at, we've already looked at opportunities and pursued them. And we're going to continue to do that. So.
If I may, I also would like to just say that, looking at that whole levee going from, pretty far south beyond Canalways and moving up to Tiscornia, this is the area with by far the lowest and most degraded part of that. So it becomes moving west of Spinnaker, it becomes sort of an uneven dirt path around the soccer field. And so this is by far the area with the greatest need.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? Okay, hearing none or seeing no more, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I will provide just one note to the public wishing to make comment, and that is a reminder that right now this is not a question of approval of this particular project. They are focused on understanding what needs to be studied within the environmental impact report. So I would request that we limit our comments to just what we want to see studied in the EIR. We're not commenting on the merits or adequacy of this project. So with that in mind, I will ask staff to open up public comments.
Thank you, Chair Samudzi. At this time, I'm going to request just a few minutes to allow the interpreters to swap. Okay. So if there's anyone on the conference call that wishes to provide public comment on this agenda item, please press *9 to virtually raise your hand. Once it is your turn, you'll hear a notification that the host is inviting you to participate. At that time, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. You can then speak, introduce yourself, and you will be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure to have the volume of any other device watching YouTube Live turned down so that you don't get feedback or an audio delay. While I wait for participants to press *9, I will request public comments be submitted through the YouTube Live chat for this item. And I'm looking to see, and I do not see any. So I will check to see for raised hands. If you're wishing to speak, if you please would raise your hand so that I know you're ready to speak. And I do not see any raised hands. And no chat comments.
Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, at this point, I'll close the public hearing. At this point now, we'll open up full discussion to the commission around, additional comments or discussion points you have with regards to what we want to see within the EIR. I will allow this to be a bit of a free-for-all. Then at the very end, I'll just do last word and run down the list one by one. So for those of you who have burning comments or additional follow-up questions, now is your time to shine.
I have questions about the alternatives that are being studied. you mentioned there's two other alternatives, and I was wondering what those are.
Okay, yes, we're required by CEQA to study alternatives in an EIR that meet the project objectives. So what that means is that we can't study an alternative that says build an office building on this marsh. It has to be a marsh restoration project. We are also required that at least one of those alternatives be the no project alternative, which means status quo. So that will be one of the three alternatives. And what we've outlined in the staff report is one opportunity would be to look at a restoration effort that's perhaps smaller in scale and not include the city-owned diked marsh. And the other alternative would be perhaps to just modify the design of the marsh restoration that has been presented to maybe exclude some of the elements like the beach feature. We haven't gotten into any specifics on that, but there's certainly, if you have some suggestions you want to add to the mix, this is the opportunity to do so.
You mentioned the option of the, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but it's the ecotone sort of solution, or the horizontal levee. Could that be a potential alternative to look at the pros and cons? Because I know those tend to be controversial with all the state and federal agency permits as far as impacts on the bay side.
Certainly, and I'm going to defer to Dane or Ann to respond to that question. There are elements of this project that have that are ecotone type improvements. So,
yeah, I'll add that, you know, when we say ecotone, we're talking about sort of a gentle transition slope between the levee crest and the marsh. And I think that there may be, I don't think it'll be controversial for the, on the, along Tiscornia Marsh. We are we're trying to create the ecotone landward of the existing marsh, so we wouldn't be filling any of the marsh. But I think that, you know, I think as we go through the permitting process and the regulatory process, there may be some input on what's the footprint of that ecotone slope and what's the extent. But I would think that maybe in terms of it wouldn't rise to the level of like what would make it a, removing it would make it a good CEQA alternative to look at.
But isn't what you're proposing all the way to the proposed beach, isn't that regarded as filling in the existing deteriorated marsh in the eyes of the and federal?
Yes, sorry. You're right that the recreated marsh is basically being built in what's currently mud flat. So I misunderstood your question. You're saying maybe, are you asking maybe not have the recreating the marsh with dredge material?
No, actually I like that idea because it's what's needed for the restoration. But isn't that regarded as a big no-no in the eyes of the Fish and Wildlife, as like you're filling in the bay? And that's why I'm confused that that's a proposal, because my experience has been they're like, no way, you're not doing this. Am I wrong?
Well, things are changing.
Things are changing.
Yes.
Barbara, if you say you're changing, I believe you. Tell me.
Well, they're not changing really quickly, and for some agencies, but for others, they're really changing a lot. And so BCDC changed their policies to allow for filling the bay, because you're right, they had a big no-no for many years. But now they have policies that allow it for habitat, and certainly the regional board is supportive, and so it's changing.
You know, Barbara, you might want to mention that you've had a hands-on meeting through the BRIT process, which involves all of the agencies that typically get involved with the permitting. And Commissioner Davidson, this is sort of a grander version of what the county sponsors with the multi-agency group that meets monthly. And that meeting is really primarily for the other agencies that issue permits for this sole purpose. And I do know that you have already reached out to those folks to get some initial read. You want to mention it?
Talking to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we had a mixed review, I'd have to say. But this is a group that has been well established specifically for projects that are funded or that are eligible for funding by the Measure AA funds. And so we had this meeting, and we are going to have another one next month. And so there is great interest in getting our project in a place where it would be able to be permitted. That's what the purpose of the BRIT is, to get projects permitted, restoration projects permitted. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm happy to hear that they're more open about this type
Right.
of work.
So they're open for restoration projects. So I can't say they're open for other kinds of projects, but.
Yeah.
I think if I can add a little bit to there, I think I can tie your question to Commissioner Saudi's earlier question a little bit on sea level rise. I think part of the reason why there's this discussion about whether some amount of fill is acceptable or not is because it's become more clear over time that the reality is that a lot of these marshes are eroding. And so we did, as part of the design, we did look at what might happen if nothing is done. At what rate would we lose the marsh at its current rate of erosion? And so that ends up becoming like a piece of context when evaluating whether placing some amount of fill could do some good in terms of preserving what habitat is there and maybe expanding it a little bit. But we did look at like a case of like a no project condition, and in some portions of the marsh you lose it in about 20 or 30 years at the rate that it's eroding, which is why it's yeah.
Oh, I'm just gonna say that's recognized by many agency people, and if the marsh erodes, you're gonna have to put up riprap, and we don't need any more of that. That's not, we lose endangered species habitat, we lose all the other benefits of the marshes. So we're working with them to get the project permitted to the place where it can be permitted. I wasn't sure, Bernice, whether I know Bernice from the county, whether you were talking about the horizontal levee actually filling marsh, and I just wanted to clarify that we're working to avoid that. It will not be the kind of horizontal levee that you see in many drawings. Big, long, wide thing. It will be it will be shorter.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of the need for importation of dredge material in order to enhance the habitat, but it sounds like the permitting agencies are more accepting of that now than they were before. So thank you. I'm happy to hear that.
I have a question. So a few years ago, I volunteered to help remove some invasive species from Aramburu Island, near the community of Strawberry. And one of the issues that I learned about on that place, which is really a haven for birds, is an invasive species of Canadian geese. And I'm wondering if the EIR could address the possibility or the prevention of invasive species on birds or other animals on the gravel beach. And if anyone has any comments on that, that would be great too.
Well, does anybody else want to, I mean, I don't see that the gravel beach will attract Canada geese because they go places where there's things for them to eat. As far as I know, I understood they were a problem at Arambaroo. They have been a problem in places in the South Bay. When we did our project in Corte Madera, I did a lot of research on this. We put up stakes and had string. We had no problem with Canada geese because they could see that and they weren't going to get caught in it. I was last week down at the new marsh that the Bridge District created. It was covered with Canada geese. There were well over 100 Canada geese there grazing on their, they have a big upland component and they did a lot of planting, but you know, it's all being munched up. So anyway, if there are areas that I don't see a whole lot, but if there are areas, I think we know what to do and that can be addressed in the EIR.
Great. Thank you.
I was just going to briefly add to what Barbara mentioned, that in terms of she reflected what the design was, and I do think that it is important, and we often do in EIRs and CEQA documents, address whether the project would result in any potential to change a habitat or an area in a way that invasive species, whether they be animal or plant, could populate or take a stronger hold on an area than existing. So I think that would be something that we could easily incorporate into the EIR analysis.
Yeah.
But I've made a note about that one.
Any other points of discussion?
If I could just say before we end up, I guess we are pretty soon, that how happy I am that everybody's so supportive, and thank you for your attention, and we hope to proceed here with speedily and get some dredge material, and hope to see you again soon.
All right, thanks for that. Unless no further comments, I'm going to request a motion to provide.
So moved.
Commissioner Lubomirsky.
Yep.
Second.
I'll second that, Commissioner Sadi.
Thanks. Any? None. I'll ask staff to conduct roll call.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lubomirsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Saudi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Privatali,
Yes.
and Chair Samudzi.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. And thank you to the applicants. We look forward to seeing the EIR and moving forward with this project. All right, have a good evening. All right, next we'll move on to the director's report.
Okay, I'm going to take an opportunity since we have a little bit of time and just give you an update on some of the stuff that's been happening around the city. We have, you've seen quite a number of projects in the past year or two, and I just wanted to let you know, as you know, Oakmont is well under construction. Oakmont is the one visible as you drive along 101, just before you get over the hill if you're driving southbound. Whistle Stop has submitted their applications and going through their first round of building permits. So hoping that that building permit will be issued soon and then we can get them under construction soon. Aegis Housing, that's the one on the corner of Mission and Lincoln, or sorry, the Mission and Fifth. That has been submitted for an application and they have a building permit ready to issue. So that's hopefully going to be under construction soon. So I did wanted to let you know that the DRB Design Review Advisory Committee concept kind of more nailed down was provided to the DRB last week. So they got their first chance of review of what that pilot program might look like. The next step is to bring that forward to your commission with, along with the comments that the design review board provided. And then it would be then go on to the city council for action. I also wanted to let you know that the city is hosting 3 webinars related to historic structures in the downtown area. And the purpose of these webinars is to provide property owners with an opportunity to ask questions about the purpose of, doing this historic surveys and what it means to be have their property designated as a historic resource. And so that's happening. We had one today. We're going to have a couple more in the coming days. And so if anyone's interested in that, go into our city's website and click under the General Plan 2040, and you should be able to find access to the webinars there. And then lastly, I wanted to say that last week, the City Council adopted those packet of housing policies that have been, kind of trickling through for the past 6 months. And so the City Council adopted a policy or ordinance that allowed a resolution to allow a in lieu fee that is, and kind of that you had seen a variation of what that might look like, allowing property or developers to take advantage of an opportunity to do an in lieu fee. And so the City Council adopted that. There were also some streamlining policies that went through. One of the things that the City Council decided to not adopt was a policy related to, or an ordinance related to the hillside exceptions process. What staff was requesting was that the exceptions process be reduced down to a planning commission decision. And that was basically to keep it in line with how we review other variances. And the City Council decided that hillside exceptions were unique, and so they voted against making any changes to that. But all the other policies that were brought to them, they agreed with. And so the next step is to have a second reading, and that'll happen next week. And that is it for my report. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Ali, can I jump in and find out about the tower that's going in 2nd and 3rd and Tamalpais?
2nd and 3rd and Tamalpais.
Or Lincoln. I'm right by the paint place.
Are you talking about 703 3rd Street?
703 3rd. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
We have not seen an application come through. We did reach out to some of the developers that had received approvals, and one of the comments we heard from the property owners at 703 is that they're, having trouble just, with what has happened with COVID, and trying to align all their pieces. So they're just having trouble getting that, started. So don't know what it will look like in terms of when they will submit, but we haven't seen an application submitted for that.
And how about the hotel out on East Francisco?
So the last I heard on that one was that, as you probably had heard, there was some litigation that had occurred. The applicants were successful in avoiding any changes to their approvals, or I think one of the issues was whether they were able to develop multifamily housing, and so they were, the courts voted in their favor, and so right now they're working on getting their funding and their ducks in a row so that they can submit.
Okay, and last comment. This is before, I think, almost everyone's time. The Blue Wave on East Francisco. I happened to be driving out to Target, and there were cars that were lined up all the way into the intersection to get into the Blue Wave car wash. I can't believe that's what I was told. I was promised by numerous people on the project, oh, we'll never have cars lined up into the street. Look, it's gonna go. Anyway, that's all.
Who knew it would be that popular?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
I bet Commissioner Davidson has a monthly card or whatever.
She's got a monthly pass. Yeah, she's in there all the time, man. The paint's getting worn off. So,
I drive by on the way to Target, and if there's a line, I just keep going.
I don't go because there's a line. No, I'm just kidding. I got 3 kids. Wash my own car, man. Don't.
It was very controversial when it came to us. I was like, that's not needed. It's not a need. And why are we? So here we go. It's fun.
That is the need for
They need a second location. That's what they need, you know.
I blame Paul for that. Paul.
And I did see Paul just
Wait
jump
till May
in.
31st, then you can blame me on anything.
Or Rafi, you can blame Rafi still. Why not? He's not here to defend himself, you know.
My predecessor, when he hired me in 2008, and because I had worked here for the city decades before, I said, I came back to fix all the mistakes I made. So maybe I'll come back a third time, huh? Yeah.
No, funny.
Oh,
Paul, did
I
you want
remember
to
that
change?
discussion about the queuing. It was not, yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything about the North Gate Walk or the 703 3rd Street.
No, but I don't think Commissioner Lubramersky was asking about Northgate Walk. I think he was asking about the hotel approval on Francisco.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Northgate
Okay.
Walk, though, she gave you a very good report. The litigation got settled. So
on the hotel project on Francisco, that one is they're getting their maps documents ready so that they can record as you may recall, the project included a tentative map for consolidating the lots. So they're getting those documents together. And then once they have that, the next step would be to get their building permit submitted.
Okay, thank you.
They might even add an extended queue because they're just across the street, right?
I am just wondering about the completion of the Marriott hotel so we can use the top story bar.
Yes, that's a date.
Is there an update on that?
Yeah.
I want to say something about that. When I first started here as a very young planner in 1980, this is when former Mayor Al Boro was on the Planning Commission. And after the Planning Commission meeting, the entire Planning Commission and staff would go to San Rafael Joe's for cocktails. And it's like, talk about Brown Act. That was before the Brown Act sort of had all of these rules and regulations.
Before Brown Act lawsuits, you mean?
Yeah, right, exactly. But, I'm not adverse to going to a rooftop place to enjoy the view for something like that. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
The project is going to be a very good test for how people react to height downtown, because that's taller than the other project that's near completion at the corner of 2nd and B Street.
Yeah, but that one sits lower in downtown. So I think people will, yeah. People, it's already topped out, right? People already are seeing it at its full height.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say that if Commissioner Lubrameski goes to that bar on the top floor, it passed the test.
Well, I will absolutely go there. I mean, I go to the top of the parking lot and back my truck in with what I need to drink and then watch the sunset. So that'll be a vast improvement over the top of the parking lot. So yeah,
it's technically illegal for drinking.
I'll be there. No, is it? Is
it? Just use sippy cups.
No, red Solo. Red Solo. I learned that at Davidson and Coleman. That's a Solo cup. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
So, Chair Samudzi, if I may, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. We are looking for a senior planner. And so since we have the airs open, hopefully somebody out there is listening. If you're interested, it's a great place to work. So check out our website and apply.
And you're looking for a commissioner as well. Is there an update?
I don't have an update. We are looking for a commissioner. I did reach out to our city clerk last week, and I know that they are soon, if they haven't already, there will be an advertisement.
And Paul, how long do we have you to kick around? For
May 30th.
May 31st, yes.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll way out yellow or orange. We can meet in person again.
Sure.
We're red as of today.
I know. Yeah. Let's go. We're orange. Orange. Well, orange is the new yellow.
I think orange will be in orange by March. I feel like March 15th-ish.
Okay, can we meet then in orange? I mean, I'll have my vaccination by then, so that's all.
We'll be pretty close and by the time he retires, so maybe we'll have an opportunity.
Yeah, outdoor dining's open.
Mhm.
Allie, what are the are there, as we go down in tiers, is there any discussion about how there may be hybridized like hours for you guys? I mean, the Zoom things have been great, you know, making an appointment online and just meeting with planners that way has been really, I've really enjoyed it. But I'm guessing there are people who would like to be able to walk in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're at a point where, and I don't know if that's a yellow tier or an orange tier. I think last time we were talking about an orange tier where we were talking about coming back into the office and providing some hours for walk-in service. So once we're at that point, I think we'll start transitioning again. So yes, the idea is that we would kind of have this overlapping. In terms of our planning commission meetings, I think that will probably go through the end of the year. I don't imagine that we're going to be having, you know, in-person planning commission meetings.
Yeah, that seems a little different because there could be, yeah, crowds or a lot of attendees.
I'm going to the Warrior game and the Giants game, I hope. No? Well, I guess it's outside.
That's outside, yeah.
They sell like every 10th seat or something like that. That's crazy.
Funny.
Okay, any other items? Director's report. Was that everything, Allie?
That's everything, sorry.
Okay.
I thought we moved on from that, sorry. Yes, that's everything from their director's report.
Okay, cool. Any other communication from Planning Commission members? Okay. In that case, meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Night.
you. Good night.